Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch.
Okay, here with the founder and current president.
Founder, owner, CEO,
CEO,
COO, guy who cleans the toilets.
Of a website that obviously fans, but more importantly, the whole league reads. And listen, this is my type guy. We don't always agree. Now, you wouldn't know because I'm just reading you.
I've heard some things. I've heard some things you've said about me, and I can't remember what they are, but I remember being pissed off at you, and then I forget about it.
But
Isn't
I
that
like
funny how
your
life
style.
goes?
You'll talk some shit, and my former boss, Howie, and you guys have a nice little good back and forth.
I love Howie, and there are times where I want to strangle Howie, but I love Howie.
My guy, Dom DeSandro, I don't think's too happy with you right now, Mike.
I don't know what Dom's problem is, but you know what? It's his problem.
Was it that big a deal? Let's be real.
Well, no.
It wasn't a big deal.
Well, but
And I'm a Niner guy. It wasn't that big
if you're
a deal.
on the sideline and you're not a player and you're not a coach, stay the fuck off the white line. That's the easy rule. Stay off the white line. And don't go throwing yourself around like you're some big shit that you're going to get in the middle of this. You're not there because people are like, he's security. Well, this isn't a club. He's not a bouncer at a club when he's at a game. He's not there to help the officials keep the peace. Back off and let the officials keep the peace. Don't go putting your hands on other players. It's a fairly clear, bright line. Don't go putting your hands on other players. He's not part of the process that would be putting his hands on other players.
I don't disagree with you there. Like, it was a mistake. It happened, and we just move on. Like,
yeah.
You
But I don't
believe he should be kicked out of the league.
I don't think
you
he
were
should be kicked out of the league for it. I just thought, look,
He was fined $100,000.
Well, we'll see if he paid it, but and
Sources say he paid.
Okay, but
Coming from the big guy.
but the reality
It's
is
a lot of money, Mike.
I know it's a lot of money.
He's not a coach.
I understand that, but I'm sure he'll get it back one way or the other from
Yeah,
Jeff
probably.
Lurie.
It's
I mean,
Philly,
you get a little bonus here or there. There are ways to supplement your income, but the point is like, because I got to be careful what's on the record, off the record. But I've heard from people that like Dom was upset. It's like, well, I don't care if Dom's upset.
No, he was upset.
Well,
He
that's
is.
fine. I mean, don't step onto the white line and push a guy. It's not my fault. I didn't force him to do it. He did it. And that's when that was the game of the week, except for Sunday Night Football on NBC. That was the game of the afternoon.
One of the games of the year
49ers,
with the
Eagles.
build-up.
Right. And it's a key moment.
I agree.
And Dre Greenlaw gets ejected.
That's stupid. I mean, he shouldn't.
But that's what makes it a bigger deal.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Dre, for the little grazing, it was
stupid.
like a grazing of the chin.
The
He
whole
didn't even
thing
hit
was
him.
dumb.
Yeah, but the point is, I like if you're gonna be mad at the aftermath and the fallout from what you do, then just don't do it. Don't be mad at the people who react to what you do.
Well, he's a person. He's a human. You get mad at people, I'm sure, over the years.
I don't know the guy. I got no agenda against the guy. The guy's Italian. He's a compadre. He's a paisano. I'm not wired to go after the guy. It's just it happened. And I think I was talking to Sims yesterday because Sims was talking to him and he was bitching about it. It's like, come on, man. But he's mad because of some email I sent to the league. I found the email I sent last night. I sent an email asking simple questions. Here's what happened. Here are my questions about it. They were very innocuous.
Oh, so you were being? I didn't know that. You were asking the league for comments about the situation.
Yeah. Like what happened?
You're a journalist, are you? A journalist?
Exactly. I don't know what I am, but I've learned over time how to find the answers to questions, and I have a pipeline to the league. It's like, here's what happened. Help me understand the rule. What are the consequences for this? Because earlier in the year, they sent out a memo about these incidents
rules.
that can happen,
Yeah.
And it turned out that they had a separate memo that was sent out specifically for guys like DeSandro about staying the fuck out of the white line. So he only had himself to blame, and if he's got a problem with anything I said, it is his problem. And if he's mad about anything I said, I'm not apologizing for anything I said because I didn't say anything he should be upset about.
Okay, let's move. There's no point in rehashing. I know, I did. I did. Oh, I got Dom's back. I'm supporting the big guy.
I go wherever the wind takes me.
Let's.
You know how you support the big guy? You tell him in the future, don't go in the white line.
Who's the most angry at you here right now, you think?
I don't know who else here.
Well, a lot of coaches. Listen, Andy Reid's here. Belichick never missed this. Some of these guys missing, like, I don't know.
I'll give you an example.
I think they should be here. That'd be my
Well,
take.
Andy
Just
Reid's-
for the
right,
interviews.
Right.
That's what Andy told me yesterday. I come to meet the kids. That's the only thing important.
Well, and that's my counter to the coaches who would say, I can
it's a gossip fest.
watch the workouts on film. I can participate in the Zoom interviews while
home.
everybody else is in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think if you're going to drag the kids here and put them through this process, and I know they have them all brainwashed into thinking it's an honor and a privilege, and I think that's bullshit. It's an honor and a privilege for the teams to have the ability to do something that is far more probing and meaningful than just like they used to do. They did the draft in December. You know, when it's time to make your pick, you're making your pick. You are in a position where
times have changed.
Well,
Money's
I know,
changed.
but my point is this. It's not an honor and a privilege for the kids.
Kinda.
It's okay.
What job pays that type of money?
I know, but somebody's getting that job. They need the kids to make it easier for them to pick the right ones. They're picking somebody for those jobs. They're going to draft somebody. And there are certain guys that don't need to submit to the process. I was talking to a couple of GMs last night. There's about 150 to 175 guys where they don't really need to be here.
Marvin
It's
Harrison
the
does
rest
not need to be
right,
here.
The rest
Yeah,
of them need to be here.
I agree.
They don't need to go through the interviews. They need to do this stuff. I mean, Deion Sanders at one point, when he was going through it, and I think it was the Giants.
It was the Giants.
They had that long, all that questionnaire.
Said,
He's
I ain't
like,
getting
where
to
do
you.
you draft? I'm not going to be on the board then. I like that attitude.
That's a small percentage of
I know,
players.
but I like that attitude because, and this is just part of the contrarian
You're pro
nature.
the little guy.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man.
Even though you're the big guy
But anyway,
now.
here's my point. I think it's a sign of respect for the kids that have to come here. Kids can't do it by Zoom. And I think if I'm a coach and I'm sitting here for all these and I'm showing to these kids that I care about this, it's important to me. Even if I only draft 7 of them, I'm making a relationship with those 7, and some of these other guys may be free agents at some point, or I may be a coach at another team where those guys are playing. And I'm showing to them that this is a long, demanding week for them, and I'm not staying home. I'm here for it. So that part of it, I think, is a reason for the coaches to be here. And it's only 5 or so that aren't here. I think if they would ever take it out of Indy and make it a traveling road show, it would be more like 15 or 20 that wouldn't show up.
To me, if Andy Reid is going to be here and forever Belichick was here, McVay and Kyle should be here. McCarthy. These are guys, some of the biggest names. Belichick never missed this thing. Pete Carroll was always here. There's clearly value. To me, it's less about even the disrespect. It's more they're disrespecting the entire event kind of too. Like they don't think it's as important. Like bullshit.
Well, somebody made the point that 2 things. One, as they make it bigger and bigger, as they put more and more hype, they make it more of a made for TV event. That's kind of like a protest against that.
That's what Breer was telling me.
And the idea that you're getting hit up for jobs wherever you go.
Yeah,
you got people hanging around looking for a job, and I don't want to deal with that. Like you go out at night and you're dealing
Isn't
with
that
this
part
person.
of your job, though?
Well,
it's like that's part of life.
Yeah.
You get everyone's bugging you. It's like welcome
Right,
to the,
you learn how to
welcome
deal
the
with
world.
it. You learn how to deal with it, and you move on to the next person. I agree with you, but I'm just trying to understand why 5 of them would feel compelled to not be here. And most coaches look
Who
at
are
it.
the 5? Kyle, Sean, McCarthy, Saleh?
Yeah, but I think Saleh's coming.
Okay.
I think what happened was
Little pressure.
when I wrote the story over the weekend
Owner
that
Saleh?
Saleh wasn't coming, somebody high up in the organization saw it, and now Saleh's coming. I think he's just coming like Saturday, but he's still coming.
At least the other guys were in the playoffs.
right. And LaFleur's not coming either. That's the 5th one.
Yeah, 4 of them have in common. They're all of the same little buddy group, right?
Get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN. New customers can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours.
Okay, I would say the biggest story so far, you talked to him yesterday, the Ryan Poles, Justin Fields situation. My takeaway, sure feels like Fields is traded. If I had to take an educated guess, by the end of next week, we have a destination.
They got to trade him. They got to trade him soon because there's too many other quarterbacks out there who are available on the first day of free agency. And we know how it goes this week. Teams are expressing interest, and they don't necessarily make offers financially this week, although for some of the bigger names, maybe they will. But you've got seats that are going to start filling up.
Yeah.
So if you're going to place Justin Fields in one of those seats, you better do it before somebody signs Kirk Cousins. I mean, the best example is
Russell
Atlanta.
Wilson.
Exactly. Russell Wilson's going to be released. And even as late as last week, some people were like, oh, don't rule out Russell Wilson going back to
Give me
Denver.
a break.
Rule it out. There's no way he's going back. There's no way that's going to work out. They're not going to guarantee $37 million next year fully and completely, and he's not going to change the date on which that guarantee of $37 million for injury vests. And some of the stuff he said to Brandon Marshall, if you watch that podcast appearance, little things that the Broncos would say he's just wrong, and it doesn't lay the foundation to mend fences. He's gone. It's over, but he'll be part of it too. So if you're the Bears, you got to move. And in a weird sort of way, Sims and I were talking about this morning, I can't help but wonder whether or not the Bears are deliberately trying to agitate Fields to get him to ask to be traded, because I think they're realizing they're not going to get much for him. So if he asks to be traded and it's kind of like a fire sale thing and they don't get
we got
much,
a fourth.
they can say, hey, the guy wanted to be out. We're trying to do right by him. He asked to be traded. You know, what do you expect us to get when the guy asks to be traded? Because I think that they were trying to be coy, and no one is saying, hey, we really want him. We'll give you a second-round pick or a first-round pick. Here's the other window, too, that I would watch. This is risky, but if they don't trade him before the musical chairs stop before or early into free agency, after the first round of the draft, anybody who decides we want a quarterback in the first round of the draft, if you don't get your guy, then in those 18 hours before round 2, maybe the Bears trade Fields for that team's second-round pick.
Ideally, you'd like to avoid that.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that because then you may be stuck with both guys.
People come in the
Exactly.
building, it gets weird. You know, I think people understand if you had to trade him for a fourth. Like, it's like, yeah, the market wasn't there because a fifth-year option. We remember Sam Darnold. They traded a second, picked up the fifth-year option. They regretted it.
Right.
Baker Mayfield, I think he had the Browns picked it up, but clearly, you know,
the Browns picked it up, and then he gave up
He had to eat it.
$3.5 million to facilitate the trade to Carolina.
Like, how if I trade a second-round pick, I have to pick up that fifth-year option.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
It's $25 million, which isn't all that much, grand scheme of things, when you consider the quarterback market.
Is he a $25 million player right now?
It's $3.2 million for this year and $25.334 million for next year.
So it's
and
like
that's
2
part
years,
of what you're picking
$14
up.
million,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
if you
but
want to
that's
look
what
at
you're
it.
picking up. And then the question becomes, okay, I'm getting a guy who is content with that arrangement, or am I getting a guy who says, I'm not playing for $3.2 million this year. I've put in 3 good years. You traded for me. I'm not playing for 3.2. I want, like the Kyler Murray thing. I'm not setting foot on the field for $4.5 million, 4th year of my contract. I want a deal now.
I think I've talked a lot about the Washington, but let's skip to the third team, the Patriots. I think I read it on your site how Gerard Mayo said, like, we need the media. We know our relationship with the media needs to be good. It feels like a massive pivot, and I'm not even blaming him. I think it's coming from ownership of, like, we need to be buddy-buddy with everyone. It's like, in the NFL, if he starts 0-5, no one cares about that. So I understand the Crafts internally thinking that matters because they've seen the opposite. But, like, if this guy doesn't win, it's going to be a disaster. I think they're worried about the wrong things right now. And it starts with Robert and Jonathan.
Well, and I think that Mayo, this is what's going to be interesting. He can say all of these things to try to distinguish himself from Bill Belichick, but the reality is when you have spent so much of your career playing for and coaching with Bill Belichick,
his entire career,
you don't realize. Yeah, that's right. He took that 3 years and he was working in another industry, but all of his time playing and all of his time coaching is with Belichick. You don't realize how much being around him just kind of becomes how you view the world and how you coach. But as it relates to the media, the reality is, and we saw it happen this year, when it starts to go sideways, all those people that you treated without the proper respect, for whatever reason, whatever it is, it's a military mindset, he doesn't want to say anything to compromise him, regardless, the grumpiness and being, short with people, that all comes back to roost when you're not winning. So you do buy yourself a little more grace period if you're nicer to the media than if you're
Brandon
an asshole.
Staley's a good example. He was like calling everyone by name, and then they turn
That's
on you
the
when
Sean
you start.
McVay. That's the Sean McVay thing, the name repetition.
Well, it does work. Media's easy to placate to that way. Just call,
Isn't
hey, Bill, thanks for the question.
Isn't it funny how easy it is to manipulate the human organism?
Very.
John,
Very.
aren't you amazed by that, John?
Well, but it's why so many coaches that study psychology and have that mindset typically do better. And say this about Bill. Like, let's talk about Belichick. I think it's pretty crazy. And I understand it was pretty ugly last couple of years. If you watch them play this year, obviously the quarterback sucked, and that's his fault. He's still fucking good.
Yeah.
You know, he's an elite defensive coach. The players still really like him. He didn't get a job. I mean, that's insanity to me.
Well,
and honestly, he only really had one option, right? And clearly the powers that be wanted no part of him because they would have been asked out, right?
I think what Robert Kraft said in the press conference he conducted after they did the joint announcement of the separation.
Or Bill gave him the fake hug or a different one.
Exactly. But when Kraft came back to answer questions and they said, well, Belichick alluded to the possibility of taking less power and staying, and Kraft said, well, that just wouldn't work. It would be too awkward. It would be too confusing. And I think that same mindset applies anywhere else he goes because this is a guy, early 70s. So you're a GM, let's say you're 43. And
Adam Peters.
Yeah, and here's Bill Belichick, who has been in complete control of the football operation of the Patriots for years. And now, hey, it's our first draft meeting. And I'm the 43-year-old GM, and I'm completely in charge, and the head coach works for me. That ain't working. It's not working. And when it's time to pick a receiver in round 4, and you say, hey, coach, this is the guy I'm thinking at, and he makes a face or, well, I guess I'm not taking that guy. So even if he doesn't have the power, he still has the power. So I think the question is, for the duration of this year, is there an owner that looks at where his or her team currently is and decides, I'm willing to throw the keys to Bill Belichick? Because that's what you have to do. You have to throw him the keys and say, drive wherever you want, however you want, you're in charge. And will somebody be willing to do that?
Well,
I don't know.
I think it's fair to say he is no lock in 2025 cycle to be a coach in a year, right?
He's got to get back in the media, too. And
why doesn't he do Amazon Thursday night? 30 owners are watching.
Right.
Why don't they replace Herb Street with him?
And it's not just owners. I think you got to get fans behind it. When it was starting...
Do you think that's the move, Amazon?
Well, I don't know. It could be NBC. I don't know.
But you don't have an opening.
Well,
Collinsworth.
No, but I think he's better off in studio.
You don't think
than
doing
a
a game
site? No, I think he needs to be in a position where he's watching the whole league and monitoring the whole league and commenting on the whole league instead of just focusing on one game at a time. I don't know how good he'd be doing a game. I think that's because
it's risky,
him,
but I think
we've seen him in a
it could
studio
be awesome.
setting with the NFL.
Yeah,
all-time 100 team.
He was awesome.
But I think that, and I know that when it looked like this season was going to end poorly for the Patriots and he was going to be out, I posed a very generic question on X. If your favorite team was looking for a coach in this upcoming cycle, would you want Bill Belichick? And it was over 70% no. I think he's got to get people out there who are football fans to believe that he's the answer. Because the owners, ultimately, at the end of the day, they count on the fans devoting money and time and emotion and support and just everything they have to following the team. So you have to feel good about the coach. And so I think there's two battles he's got to fight. He's got to win the fans, and then he's got to win an owner who's willing to say, you're in charge.
Well, I think there are two spots that everyone's going to talk about, and rightfully so, are going to be the Eagles, because they got a coach. If they struggle, he's going to get fired. And McCarthy's on the last year of his deal. But the Giants and the Jets. Now, I know he hates the Jets, but those are two organizations who, let's face it, the Dayball situation got weird.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard about the wink. We all heard about the wink thing. That was weird. And it did not go well. What if they suck again? And the Jets, have a chance to be a disaster. That organization has a lot of money. The Giants have Bill Belichick's heartstrings. Jeffrey Lurie has a Boston guy, followed him, and Jerry's Jerry. I think maybe there is Bill's going to have more options than I think now talking it out. If some of these, but now if the Eagles and Cowboys have success, maybe McCarthy gets extended. I think there's just a lot of moving parts with those two teams that are good.
I agree with you. You've got three teams in the NFC East that potentially end up pursuing Bill Belichick. And Jerry Jones has spoken openly about it, even after it was clear he was keeping Mike McCarthy.
Had to cross his mind those couple days when he was in limbo, right? Don't you think?
Absolutely. And we were talking about it and writing about it, and I was finding old quotes where Belichick would praise Jerry and Stephen Jones for the team they've put together. The Joneses have done a much better job over the past 10 years than
Cowboys
Bill Belichick
well
has done putting a team together.
Agreed.
So, the old Parcells saying, you want me to cook the meal, but you don't want me to shop for the groceries. They have a very well-stocked kitchen with everything that Bill Belichick would need. He's got a young Lawrence Taylor and Micah Parsons.
I wish Jerry would have done it. It would have been sweet.
I'm surprised he didn't. And I know the Eagles were aware of the contrast between the Cowboys issuing a statement that their coach who has won 12 regular season games for 3 straight years is coming back, and the Eagles not issuing a statement. It's like, why do you, if you are a functional, normal organization, why do you need to tell the world you're not firing your head coach?
Sirianni was closer to getting fired than McCarthy.
I think that, well, and he had to do something. Look, he had to convince Jeff Lurie that it's going to work. When they asked him in his press conference, and I can't remember whether it was his season-ending press conference or it was, I think it was probably after the loss to the Bucs, the idea that, what are you going to do to fix it next year? Well, I have confidence I'll fix it. Well, that doesn't tell me what you're going to do to fix it. You better have a better plan when it's time to sit down with Jeff Lurie than I'm confident that I'll fix it. And whatever Lurie heard from him after they had a chance to let the dust settle, it must have worked, because that's where it went sideways with Doug Peterson. Yeah. They reached an impasse over what they're going to do with coordinators, and out goes Peterson. So I really do think that there was some circling the wagons, there was some scrambling, and there was some, that I still don't know how to properly explain that cocktail of emotions that were reflected on Jeffrey Lurie's face in the fourth quarter of the loss to the Buccaneers, where it was combination.
It was the best face this year.
And so how do you take that face and turn it into a smile? And he ultimately smiles on Nick Sirianni. So Sirianni had to have a hell of a plan. And if it doesn't work, I agree with you. He's going to be out.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. You know, the first car I ever got, I was 16 years old. And my grandpa gave me a ride. And like any young lad who got a car that, let's face it, would not have been my first choice, I had to touch it up a little bit. And we tinted out the windows. We added a big subwoofer to the back. And you could hear me from miles away coming home. My parents sure loved me for that one. So did my neighbors. But I think the key to any young person getting a car is to personalize a little bit, because you're probably not going to get your dream car. And as you get older, you kind of become a car person or you don't. But you definitely have preferences, right? Some of us like bigger cars. I know I do. I've only had big cars, SUVs. And there are certain non-negotiables. I like 3 rows of seats. Now, ideally, I don't have kids right now, so I take out that 3rd row seat, and I like a big, I like a lot of trunk room. Some people, don't like SUVs, like smaller cars. I've never been that big since my high school car of tinting the windows. I don't care if you see me or not, but I know some people, like, the first thing they do is tint the windows. It's crazy. The older you get, I had to have the subwoofers. The subwoofer, I couldn't listen to music for 5 minutes with the subwoofer like I did when I was younger. But there is something very, very special about that first car. I don't care how many cars you get since, how much money you make to get sweeter cars. You never quite forget that first ride and some of the memorable moments that you had in it in your high school years. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply.
A couple more things I know you got to go is that the Eagles hire Vic Fangio, and I've worked for the Eagles. Under no circumstances, even if they didn't want the guy, would they just rip up the contract and let him go somewhere else that he wanted to go? They would have been like, even if you got to trade us something. And the Dolphins, and I get that something weird happened internally. How could they possibly just rip up his contract and let him go to another team? Couldn't you just be like, well, trade us a 5th-round pick or something? That seemed insane to me.
I don't think you can do trades for assistant coaches.
You can't?
But
I didn't know the rule.
But it still seemed odd that they were so willing to let him go. And maybe it really was mutual. Maybe it was just time to move on. But it speaks to a deeper issue with the Dolphins. They're able to put together a team that does well in the regular season. They can't get past the first round of the playoffs. We asked Mike McDaniel about this yesterday, and he is very expert at filibustering, whether he intends to or not. And I don't think he intends to. But we had him for like 25 minutes, and we asked 5 questions.
He's stylish, huh?
Long, meandering response. And I love listening to him, but it's hard to get to
the meat.
The meat. And one of the things that Sims has been saying about the Dolphins, they lack an edge, kind of in your face, toughness, take your lunch money, stuff you in a locker. And look, football has evolved away from the raw brute force violence, but you still need to have a little of that.
Best defense in the league, arguably won the Super Bowl. One of them.
Right.
And the Niners are a great defense.
Right. But you need to have a little of that
edge.
Yeah. And I just wonder at times whether or not the Dolphins have that. Is that what they're missing? It's like the Lions are the best example. If you could take the Lions and the Dolphins and merge them together, I think you'd have an unstoppable
But here, I'll
team.
give you an example, though, and I've talked to scouting buddies about this. It's Detroit. Tough city. It's cold. Not as much to do. One thing Miami has working against it that is not debatable is the city.
Yeah.
And unlike basketball or baseball where you basically play every other day or every day, in football you got a lot of downtime. And what was some of the stuff coming out? Vic didn't think they worked hard enough. Yeah. That wasn't because they weren't paying attention. It's because they were screwing around at night and hung over and stuff. I think Miami, one thing I see with the Niners, having lived in Northern California forever, they don't play in the city. They play in Palo Alto. San Jose. There's nothing to do down there. New York City battles this. There's a lot to freaking do. And even they're kind of in the suburbs. Miami is, there's nothing quite like it. Kind of Vegas, but those guys don't live on the Strip. Yeah. And even we've seen a couple incidents in Vegas. I think that city has a lot working against it in this modern world and time of
which
we deal with.
And John,
I think it's hard to win that way.
I think that makes it even more important to get players who won't be
for sure.
Corrupted
Patriot
by
type
that.
Guys,
Not
almost.
That it's corruption in a bad way.
I know what you mean.
One of the reasons I think the 49ers have been so good, Kyle Shanahan, great coach, master of the X's and O's and planning the run game, planning the pass game, unstoppable offense, great. But I think John Lynch's ability to spot guys who are like him, who will roll out of bed and kick your ass, who don't need to practice tackling. They can tackle whenever, wherever, however. The George Kittle mindset, the Nick Bosa mindset, the Fred Warner mindset. Guys who are ready to go at the drop of a hat. They have guys like that on both sides of the ball, and I think that's one of the reasons why they continue to find ways to be around. They haven't gotten to the top yet, but they're around every year because they've got these guys that are just rougher and tougher than most of the guys that you see out there.
Okay, and on this, some of these big names, franchise tagged, fifth-year option guys like Ayuk, Higgins, Chris Jones, Snead, some of these guys are getting traded, right?
Well, there was a report yesterday, I don't know who had the report, that Snead may be tagged and traded. I think there may be some medical stuff with Snead that other teams are aware of that I think will be part of the problem if the Chiefs are hoping to get a big return. But you only got one tag per team. You got Chris Jones, you got L'Jarius
and now
Snead.
you got McDuffie coming on. It's
you got
easier
McDuffie,
to
yeah. And so look, they need to keep Chris Jones.
Yeah.
You can't you can trade Tyreek Hill and reconfigure your offense. You can't let Chris Jones go and say, oh, we'll still be fine defensively. There's no replacement for that big athletic guy in the middle of the line who does what Chris Sims likes to say, fucks up the play. There's no stat for that. But a guy who can completely disrupt everything you're doing is more valuable than any other guy on defense.
His penis once fell out right down the hall.
That's true.
When he was running the 40 here at the Indy. His career's gone up since then.
Yes. Well, it couldn't go much lower.
No, I appreciate you, Mike. Take it easy.
Great seeing you, pal. What a way to end. Good Lord. All right. Thanks.
See ya.